he didn't want to come out of the game at that time, and he just pulled it off. They put tape on it, and he went back in the game. I thought, unbelievable.
Ronnie comes out of nowhere, right? Hit this kid, and everybody went, woo.
How good was Ronnie Lott? This question sits in the middle of a split screen. Steve Largent on one side, John Madden on the other. Number 42 between them. Receivers feared him. Broadcasters celebrated him. Coaches built dynasties around him. Not for statistics. Not for 4 Super Bowls or 63 interceptions, but for what happened to everyone facing him. If you want to know what made him legendary, hit the hype feature now and show this video some love. Your engagement helps others discover how one man transformed the game. The 1980s belonged to a different NFL. Rules were simpler, hits were legal, the middle of the field was warfare. Bill Walsh built the San Francisco 49ers around finesse offense. But finesse alone does not win. Walsh needed a defense that could intimidate and punish. Lott was that enforcer. The 49ers could outthink opponents, but could not be out-muscled with him there. Walsh needed someone who could deliver brutality with intelligence. Someone who could hit like a linebacker, but cover like a corner. He found all of that in one player. Ronnie Lott was making that statement every Sunday. Number 5 is Tim Brown. Brown was the Heisman Trophy winner and Raiders legend. When Lott signed with the Raiders in 1991, Brown experienced cultural shock. He described Lott as very intense. In practice, he does not laugh or joke. If you bump him, he will not help you up. Stay out of his way. That is not friendship. It is a message, a test of self-reliance. The Raiders had history, but culture had drifted. Lott walked in like a Mustang officer, someone risen from enlisted ranks who served in the trenches. It was difficult to pull anything over on him. Brown said Lott changed the culture when he arrived. Not after a season, immediately. He did not wait to earn the right to lead. His reputation preceded him. The Raiders understood they faced a different standard. Lott led the league in interceptions his first Raider season, proving his method produced results. Principles from the 49ers were portable. They transformed any locker room. Even younger players modeled their games after Lott. Established stars like Marcus Allen respected his hierarchy. Brown's advice to players was simple: stay out of his way. Number 4 is Jerry Rice. Rice is the greatest receiver in NFL history. He had supernatural talent, speed, precision, and ability to separate from defenders in ways that seemed almost impossible. But Rice credits his legendary work ethic to one person, Ronnie Lott. Rice said Lott was the only person who could push him harder than any opponent could. Lott's intensity was not just Sundays. It was Tuesday through Saturday, every single day of the work week. Rice noted that successful people practice harder and longer than unsuccessful people. That was Lott's philosophy made manifest. During practice, Lott treated Rice not as a teammate to protect, but as an opponent to completely dominate. He jammed Rice at the line of scrimmage. He contested catches physically. He challenged him verbally. This was not bullying. This was iron sharpens iron. Rice faced tougher coverage in practice than in actual games. If Rice could separate from Lott on a Wednesday afternoon, he could separate from any corner on Sunday. Practice became a crucible, a test, a daily exam of excellence. Lott's presence meant the 49ers lived in that crucible 5 days a week, completely inoculated against the shock of game day violence. Joe Montana observed that Rice was quiet and Lott was loud, but they shared something fundamental, a fear of failure and drive for perfection. Lott used embarrassment as a tool of motivation. If a receiver dropped a pass or ran lazy, Lott would expose it publicly. Players policed themselves to avoid his judgment and criticism. Rice's famous work ethic was internally driven and intrinsic, but the standard for that work was set by Lott. He proved talent was never enough on its own. Sweat equity was the true currency of the dynasty. Montana noted Lott's leadership worked because he was willing to do what he asked of others. He did not just yell, he outworked them. Number 3 is Bill Walsh. Walsh was called the genius. He understood systems and strategy in ways few coaches ever have, yet he found his perfect physical avatar in Ronnie Lott. Walsh made a statement that still echoes. He called Lott the best athlete the club had. Think about that statement carefully. Walsh had coached Joe Montana, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever to play. He would later coach Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver in NFL history. Yet he called Lott the best athlete on the entire team. That is not a casual statement. Walsh built his entire success on what he called the standard of performance, a comprehensive management philosophy that dictated everything from how players wore their uniforms to how they conducted themselves. The core included ferocious, intelligently applied work ethic, respect for each person in the organization, commitment to learning and teaching, honor the connection between details and improvement. Walsh could preach these values but needed someone to embody them completely. Lott was that player. Walsh noted Lott's leadership demanded excellence from everyone. Lott did not tolerate casual approaches. If a player was late, sloppy, or unfocused, Lott corrected it, often aggressively. He was the bad cop to Walsh's professor role. Walsh taught the intellectual concepts. Lott executed them with physical violence on the field. He enforced philosophy through action. In 1985, Lott crushed his left pinky in a crucial game against Dallas while tackling running back Timmy Newsome aggressively. He faced a choice: complex surgery, long recovery, missed games, or amputation and immediate return. Lott chose amputation. Walsh cited this in The Score Takes Care of Itself as the definitive example of commitment and sacrifice. It became foundational myth for the 49ers. How could a rookie complain about bruises when the captain severed a body part? The amputation was a leadership statement. It set a bar for toughness virtually impossible to clear. It ensured Lott's authority was absolute. The story spread like inspiration and intimidation. Walsh also noted something remarkable. Lott was drafted as a cornerback and was immediately all-pro. Cornerback requires elite speed and incredible fluidity, but in 1985, Lott moved to safety. Most players cannot master one position at elite level. Lott mastered two at Hall of Fame level. This validated Walsh's assessment. It allowed Walsh to innovate defensively. With Lott at safety, the 49ers had a third cornerback who hit like a linebacker. It confused opposing quarterbacks. It allowed coverage disguises never possible before. Walsh used Lott's film to teach athletes about intelligence of movement. Lott became a lesson in how elite athletes think about space and strategy. Number 2 is John Madden. Madden was the voice of football for 3 decades. He sat in broadcast booths with enthusiasm and understanding that few commentators have ever matched. Madden possessed unique sensory appreciation for the game. He understood not just what happened on the field, but how it sounded, how it felt. Madden frequently placed Lott on his All-Madden teams. The All-Madden roster was Madden's fictional team of players who embodied the true spirit of football: dirt, mud, cold weather, toughness. Lott was a perennial selection. For Madden, Lott was the most knowledgeable defensive player he had ever seen in his broadcast career. Not a headhunter, not a wild hitter, a smart missile who knew when and how to hit to achieve maximum effect. He studied film obsessively. Every collision resulted from perfect timing and angle calculation. Every moment prepared through hours of careful study. But Madden is most famous for saying one specific thing about Lott: sound. Madden described Lott's hits as having a completely different sound than anyone else's in the league. Not poetic language or metaphor, physics. Most tackles are collisions where energy is absorbed. The defender catches the carrier and drags down, resulting in a dull thud. Lott's technique was fundamentally different. He drove through his target with purpose. He generated force from his hips and accelerated into contact with precision. When a rigid object moving at high velocity strikes another object with no deceleration, the sound is sharp and loud. Madden called it a crack or thwack, exactly like a baseball bat striking something with force. Madden's advice for understanding Lott was visceral and unforgettable. Grab a football, throw it in the air, have your best friend belt you with a baseball bat. No shoulder pads, no helmet. That highlights the sheer blunt force trauma Lott inflicted. The sound was the marketing hook that put backsides in recliners. People tuned in to hear violence. Madden said it plainly and directly: the sound of violence. Without it, the NFL would be a Japanese tea ceremony. Lott was the conductor. He legitimized the spectacle. Before high-definition replay existed, the sound of a Lott hit was the primary indicator of intensity for television viewers. This stands in stark contrast to modern NFL, where such sounds signal penalties. The irony is powerful and relevant. Lott and Madden later co-chaired the NFL Player Safety Panel. The man who created the sound was tasked with silencing it. But during his playing days, Lott was the ultimate purveyor of the product Madden was selling: raw, unadulterated physical conflict. Number 1 is Steve Largent. Largent was a Seattle Seahawks Hall of Famer known for his precise route running and fearless approach to the game. He was a receiver who understood angles and leverage. Yet Largent and his contemporaries openly acknowledged the necessity of identifying number 42 before committing to any route. The phrase that emerged from this reality was Lott watching. This phrase is a window into the cognitive load placed on offensive players during Lott's prime years. In modern football, receivers focus their attention primarily on the football. In the Lott era, focus had to split constantly. Lott watching means diverting visual and mental processing power away from the ball and toward the serious threat of the safety. This split attention resulted in a phenomenon called hearing footsteps, a real phenomenon where the brain anticipates collision before it happens, causing the body to brace and hands to stiffen, leading to dropped passes. Largent noted that Lott's presence required knowing exactly where number 42 was positioned at all times. Not just for self-preservation, though, that was part of it. For tactical requirement, the geometry of the field changed when accounting for Lott. If Lott was in deep half zone, a post route was suicide. If in the box, slant lane was compromised. Lott watching effectively shrank the field for opponents. Quarterbacks, sensing their receiver's trepidation, would look away from the middle, ceding that territory. The psychological impact was so profound it manifested in physical anomalies. Retrospectives on Largent reveal moments where he would catch the football with eyes closed. Largent chuckled, attributing it to instinct, but analysts suggest it was subconscious flinch response, body bracing for impact while hands performed the task. Comparisons were made between Lott and other feared hitters from that era. Jack Tatum, called the Assassin, was known for reckless abandonment. Steve Atwater was known for heavy, blunt force hitting. The consensus was Lott was different from all of them. Surgical, precise. Largent's survival of the Lott era without gloves is cited as proof of his greatness, but the fact that surviving Lott is a metric of greatness underscores how anomalous his violence truly was. Largent spoke of an era where hitting was legal and needing to operate within that framework. Lott changed the spatial geometry of the pass game fundamentally. The seam route, running vertically between linebacker and safety, became a test of character. Lott's acceleration through the receiver meant he arrived at the catch point simultaneously with the ball. No delay, no moment to prepare. He was there when you were there. The field became visibly smaller in Lott's domain. These perspectives converge on a single unified portrait. Largent feared him. Madden celebrated him. Walsh respected him. Rice grew from him. Brown deferred to him. Yet none of them saw him as a villain or a bully. They saw a force of nature, something to be reckoned with, something that elevated everyone around him. Lott viewed football as a moral undertaking and a test of character. This is the key to understanding his legacy completely. He did not hit people because he hated them. He hit them because he loved the game deeply and completely. He believed the only way to honor football was to play it at absolute physical limit. To do less was to cheat the game, the opponent, and oneself. This philosophy explains why he is revered rather than reviled. Even the players he injured speak of him with deep respect. They understood there was no malice in his game, only intensity. He was an honest hitter who destroyed opponents within the context of the play. Ronnie Lott represents the absolute apex of a specific evolutionary line in professional football history. The enforcer safety, the last of a dying breed. Subsequent rule changes, driven partly by the violence Lott perfected, made his style completely illegal. The sound Madden loved is now a penalty. Lott watching fear has been mitigated by defenseless receiver rules and protective regulations. The middle of the field is no longer unrestricted warfare. Football has fundamentally changed. But the principles Lott embodied remain the gold standard. Preparation, study, intensity, leadership by example. He showed defensive backs could control games not just by intercepting passes, but by controlling the minds of opponents. He proved players at any position could set the tone for entire organizations. He demonstrated commitment to excellence as something lived daily, not announced or discussed. In the final analysis, Ronnie Lott was not merely a participant in 1980s professional football history, he was its defining principle. For Steve Largent, he was the monster in the closet that had to be checked for on every single play. For John Madden, he was the audio track of the sport, the sound of competition at its most intense. For Bill Walsh, he was the structural integrity of the dynasty, the enforcer of philosophy. For Jerry Rice, he was the daily test that forged his legendary greatness. For Tim Brown, he was the shock to the system that restored a culture drifting without direction. He forced the entire NFL to rise to his level of intensity and commitment. He forced offenses to be smarter and more creative. He forced coaches to innovate and adapt. He forced broadcasters to find new language to describe his dominance. He forced teammates to push themselves harder than they thought possible. His legacy is not his statistics, though they are impressive. It is the standard he set. It is the way he forced an entire sport to elevate itself. So when you ask how good was Ronnie Lott, the answer is surprisingly simple. He was so good that legends changed how they played the game because he was on the field. He was so good his presence announced his greatness without words. He was so good that decades later we are still learning from him, still measuring ourselves against his standard. That is exactly how good Ronnie Lott was. Like this video if it really hit hard. Subscribe for more deep dives into the legends who shaped football forever. Comment which quote resonated most with you.